I was waiting for my girlfriend. Or at least, that's what I told myself as I sat in the corner of that narrow little cafe that smelled like burnt espresso and rain-soaked leather. The clock behind the counter ticked too loudly, and I kept glancing at the door, not because I expected her to walk in anymore, but because someone already had. Her sister. She said my name like she'd been testing how it felt on her tongue first. "You're early," she added, sliding into the seat across from me before I could stand. She didn't ask if she could. She didn't have to. People like her, women who carried silence like perfume, never needed permission. Her name was Lara. Mid-40s, maybe, though the light softened her age and made it irrelevant. She wore a dark blue coat that looked expensive in the way simple things sometimes are. I noticed her hands first, calm, deliberate hands that rested on the table as if they owned the space between us. "She's running late," I said, nodding toward the empty chair beside me. Lara smiled just slightly. She usually does. It wasn't meant as an insult, but there was something in her tone, something halfway between affection and resignation. I looked down at my untouched coffee, suddenly aware of how young my hands looked compared to hers. The waitress came by, refilling cups without asking. Lara stirred hers slowly, watching the swirl of cream disappear into the dark. I realized I hadn't taken a sip yet. I didn't want to. It felt like doing so would break whatever fragile moment was holding us there. "Do you always wait this patiently?" she asked. I shrugged. "I guess so." She tilted her head. "You shouldn't. Patience can make people disappear." I didn't know what that meant exactly, but the way she said it, softly, like a warning she'd already ignored once, made my chest tighten. There was something about her voice, low and unhurried, that made everything else in the cafe blur out. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. People passed by the window, umbrellas bumping, faces gray in the reflection. I watched them only so I wouldn't have to look at her too long. But she noticed that too. "You can look at me," she said, not unkindly. "Just honest. I don't bite." "I didn't think you did," I said too quickly. Her eyes, green, maybe hazel, narrowed slightly, amused. "Then why are you nervous?" "I'm not." That sound. It wasn't laughter. It was quieter, like she'd just discovered something she wasn't sure she should share. The silence between us grew heavier. My girlfriend still hadn't texted. My phone screen stayed dark, face down on the table. Lara's eyes flicked toward it once, then back to me, like she knew the story already. She reached for her cup, her sleeve brushing mine. Just fabric. Just contact. But I swear something passed through me. Something quiet and uninvited. When she stood, I almost did too. Almost. "She might not come," she said, fastening the belt of her coat. "She does that sometimes." "Yeah," I said, though the word barely came out. Lara smiled again, small but real this time. "Then maybe next time, you shouldn't wait. Waiting rarely changes anything." And just like that, she left. The door closed, the bell chimed, and her perfume lingered, a faint, warm trace of something I couldn't name. I sat there longer than I should have, staring at the chair she'd left empty. My coffee had gone cold. My girlfriend eventually texted, some excuse, some delay, but I didn't reply right away, because all I could think about was that voice saying, "Why wait, when you have me?" And for the first time, I wasn't sure she'd meant it as a joke. It happened again a week later. Not by plan, not by coincidence. At least that's what I told myself. Her sister had asked me to pick up some boxes from their mother's old place, something about helping Lara sort through things before the house was sold. When I arrived, Lara was already there. Same blue coat, sleeves rolled, hair tied carelessly like she'd been working for hours. The house smelled faintly of dust and lemon oil. Afternoon light poured in through the tall windows, cutting long stripes across the wooden floor. "You didn't have to come," she said without looking up. "Your girlfriend should have warned you. I'm terrible company when I'm sentimental." I shrugged, setting down the box I carried. "I don't mind silence." "That's good," she said. "I've been told it's all I have left to offer." She tried to laugh, but it came out thinner than she meant. Something about the way she said it made me stop. She was kneeling beside a pile of old books, brushing dust off their covers with those same calm hands. They trembled just once, barely noticeable, when she found a photograph tucked inside one of them. She slipped it quietly into her pocket, thinking I didn't see. I sat on the floor across from her, pretending to help sort through a box of letters that smelled like old paper and perfume. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it was full, like both of us were holding our breath for reasons we couldn't name. After a while, she broke it. "You remind me of him," she said suddenly, eyes still on the letters. "Who?" She hesitated. "Someone I used to know. Too young for me. Too kind for his own good." Her voice trailed off. The sunlight had shifted, warming her face, softening the lines around her mouth. I wanted to say something, anything, but the weight in her tone made me quiet. She sighed, then looked at me, really looked. "Don't take it the wrong way. It's just, people like you have a way of making others forget what time means." The words landed somewhere I couldn't reach. I laughed, but it came out uneven. "That sounds complicated." "It was," she said. Then, softer, "Still is." For a moment, her eyes lingered on mine longer than they should have. Not an invitation, more like recognition. The kind that feels dangerous because it's honest. We kept sorting. She hummed under her breath once, a half-remembered melody. I noticed how tired she looked when she thought no one was watching, how her shoulders slumped when she exhaled, how her fingers paused too long on the edges of things she couldn't quite let go of. When we finally finished, she poured us each a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Her laugh, low and unsteady, filled the quiet. "You should go," she said after a moment, though she didn't move. "It's getting late." I nodded, but neither of us made the first move. The air felt too fragile to disturb. Then she reached out, brushing a speck of dust from my sleeve. Just a small touch, harmless enough. But her hand lingered a heartbeat too long, soft, deliberate, uncertain. And in that brief contact, I felt it again. The gentle pull of something neither of us should want, and neither of us could ignore. It was raining that night. One of those heavy, uneven rains that made the streets shimmer and the world feel smaller. I'd stopped by Lara's place to drop off a folder her sister had left in my car. That was all it was supposed to be. She opened the door barefoot, hair loose, the faint scent of wine and rain drifting from the room behind her. "You could have left it tomorrow," she said, smiling, but her voice sounded tired. "It was on my way," I lied. Inside, the living room was dim. A single lamp cast a warm pool of light across the coffee table, where a half-finished glass of red sat beside a stack of old letters. Music played softly from her phone, something instrumental, melancholy. "You can stay a minute," she said, already walking toward the kitchen. "It's pouring too hard to leave now." I stayed. Of course I did. She came back with 2 mugs of tea, handing me one like it was the most natural thing in the world. We sat opposite each other on the couch, the silence stretching just far enough to become something else, something alive. Her robe sleeve brushed my arm when she reached for her cup, and I swear I felt the warmth long after she moved away. "You ever wonder," she said quietly, staring into her tea, "what would have happened if you met someone at the wrong time, but it still felt right?" The question hit too close. I didn't answer. I just watched the rain slide down the window behind her, silver and restless. She smiled to herself, as if my silence confirmed something. "Forget it," she said, waving a hand. "Too much wine. Ignore me." But I couldn't. There was something in her eyes, something raw, unguarded. The kind of look people wear only when they've run out of performances. Her phone buzzed on the table. A man's name flashed on the screen. She glanced at it once, then flipped it face down. The muscles in her jaw tightened, and her fingers tapped once against her knee before she caught herself. "Old habits," she murmured. I wanted to ask who it was, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "You don't have to explain." She gave a small, tired laugh. "You're kind. That's dangerous." The rain grew louder, blurring the city outside. The lamp flickered once. I could feel the closeness of her, the faint warmth of her body beside me, the scent of her shampoo, the quiet rhythm of her breath. I told myself to move, to leave, but I didn't. She turned toward me suddenly, eyes searching mine. "You ever wish," she started, then stopped. "Never mind." Her voice cracked on the edge of that unfinished thought. My hand twitched, wanting to reach for hers, but I caught it halfway, pretending to adjust my sleeve. Lara noticed. Of course she did. Her gaze dropped to where my hand hovered near hers, then rose again, slow, deliberate, trembling just enough to give her away. Outside, thunder rolled, deep and distant. Her phone buzzed again, sharp against the quiet. She flinched, then stood abruptly, crossing the room to silence it. When she turned back, her expression was calm again, masked perfectly in place. "You should go," she said softly, "before the rain stops." I hesitated, watching her trace her fingers along the rim of her glass, avoiding my eyes. Then I nodded, set the mug down, and walked to the door. Behind me, she whispered something, too soft to catch, but I knew it wasn't goodbye. It sounded more like don't. And I did. For a long time. It had been 2 days since that night. The rain, the almosts, the things we didn't say. I told myself it would fade, that distance would make it smaller, but it didn't. If anything, it stretched, thin and humming, between every thought I had. When she texted, "Can you stop by for a minute?" I went without thinking. The afternoon light was pale, flat. She was sitting by the window when I arrived, not looking at me, just staring out into nothing. The air between us felt heavy, like it already knew what was coming. "I didn't think you'd actually come," she said. "You asked." Her laugh was small, almost an exhale. That's exactly the problem. I stood there, not knowing whether to sit, or leave, or say something that could undo the quiet she'd built around herself. Instead, I waited. Finally, she turned toward me. There were faint circles under her eyes, and her hair was tied back carelessly. Somehow that made her look even more real, less untouchable. "This isn't right," she said, the words slow, deliberate. "Whatever this is." I swallowed. "I know. But you keep coming. You keep asking." That silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was honest. Like two people standing at the edge of something they both knew they couldn't cross without falling. She looked down at her hands. "You're too young to understand what happens when people like me get too close to people like you." I frowned. "People like you?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "People who've already broken something important and can't afford to break anything else." For a moment, I thought she might cry, but she didn't. She just looked tired, like she'd been holding her breath for months. "I don't want to ruin anything," I said quietly. "You won't," she replied. That's what makes it worse. The way she said it, it landed somewhere between affection and surrender. I took a step closer before I realized I was moving. She didn't back away, but she didn't reach for me either. We just stood there, a few feet apart, the air charged enough to make my skin feel too tight. "I don't even know what this is anymore," I whispered. She met my eyes, steady but sad. It's what happens when two lonely people mistake recognition for safety. The words cut clean through me. Not cruel, just true. Outside, a car passed, splashing through a puddle. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked softly. Neither of us moved. Her gaze lingered on my face, then fell to my hands. "You should go," she said, barely audible. Before I stopped meaning it. I nodded, though my throat burned with everything I wanted to say but couldn't. I reached for the doorknob, fingers trembling. "Lara," I started. She closed her eyes, shaking her head slowly. "Don't say my name like that," she whispered. "It sounds like a promise." And just like that, the silence became unbearable. Because she was right, it was. She called late, too late for it to be casual. Her voice on the phone was quieter than usual. "Can you come by?" she said. "Just for a few minutes. I found something." By now, I should have known better. But I went. When she opened the door, she didn't look like herself. Her hair was loose, her sweater half tucked, eyes red, not from crying, just from staying awake too long. On the table behind her sat a small wooden box, the kind meant to hold things people can't quite throw away. "It's not what you think," she said when she caught me looking at it. "Or maybe it is." She opened the lid, revealing a handful of photographs. Faded, curled at the edges. In one, she was younger, smiling, sunlight behind her, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. He was maybe around my age now. "This was Daniel," she said softly. "He died 12 years ago. Motorcycle accident. He was 27. Her voice didn't tremble, but her fingers did, tracing the edge of the picture. "He used to fix my sink, my car, my everything. she said, almost laughing. We weren't supposed to be anything either. I felt my breath hitch before I could stop it. He looks. I started, then stopped. Because I saw it. The same build. The same hair. Even the same stupid, crooked smile I'd caught myself seeing in reflections near her. She nodded before I could finish. I know. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside tapped lightly against the windows, a quieter echo of that night weeks ago. She sat down, resting the photo on the table, her thumb brushing across his face as if trying to erase or remember him. She didn't seem sure which. You remind me of him, she said finally. Not just how you look, how you wait, how you listen. Her voice softened. He used to look at me like I was the only thing in the room. It terrified me then. It still does. I sank into the chair across from her. My pulse was too fast, but the room felt still, like even the air was holding back. So this is why you... She cut me off, shaking her head. No, it's not why. It's just what makes it harder to know what's real. Her honesty hit harder than any rejection could have, because it wasn't about love or guilt, it was about ghosts. And I was sitting in one shadow. She picked up another photo, one of a house by the water. I found these cleaning the attic. I thought I was done feeling anything about him. Then you showed up. And suddenly, I wasn't. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her I wasn't him. But that sounded small compared to what she'd lost. When I finally spoke, my voice barely came out. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I know, she said, smiling faintly. That's what makes this worse. She closed the box gently, as though sealing it shut could stop everything it carried. Then she looked up, eyes glassy but steady. Sometimes, she whispered, life gives you the same story twice, just to see if you'll make the same mistake. And for the first time, I didn't know which of us she was war near. It had been days since the night of the box. I thought about what she said, about Daniel, about ghosts and mistakes, more than I wanted to. It lingered in my chest, heavy and unfinished. When I saw her again, it wasn't planned. I ran into her outside the cafe where it had all started, both of us stopping like we'd been caught by time itself. She smiled first, small and tired. You still wait in corners. And you still pretend you're just passing by. That got a quiet laugh out of her. She gestured to an empty table near the window. One coffee, she said. Neutral territory. It should have felt normal, but it didn't. Every movement felt weighted. How she stirred her cup, how I couldn't stop glancing at her hands, how her eyes lingered a second too long before darting away. The air between us wasn't tense anymore, just full, like everything had finally been said without needing to be repeated. I've been thinking, she began, tracing her finger along the rim of her cup, about what you said, about not replacing anyone. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her, waiting. I believe you, she said. But believing doesn't make it easier. I don't want easy, I said quietly. I just don't want to pretend anymore. That made her look up. The cafe light caught her face in a way that made her seem both older and softer at once. Pretend what? That I don't care what happens to you, I said. That I don't notice how you look when you're trying not to cry. That I don't. I trailed off, realizing I was closer to saying too much than either of us was ready for. She didn't stop me, just sat there, watching, her lips parting like she wanted to respond but couldn't find words that would make sense of any of it. After a long silence, she said, You know this can't go anywhere. I know, I said, and I still don't want to leave. Her eyes softened, and for a moment she looked almost frightened. You remind me I'm still capable of feeling things I thought I'd buried. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe, she whispered. Or maybe it's exactly how people get lost. We didn't move for a while. The world outside blurred with rain again, faint streaks against the glass. She reached for her coffee, missed it, and her hand brushed mine instead. Neither of us pulled away. The contact was small, almost nothing, skin on skin, quiet and steady, but it felt like an answer neither of us could say out loud. I could feel her pulse, a quick flutter beneath calm fingers. Finally, she exhaled. You should go before this turns into something we can't undo. I nodded but didn't move. Maybe it already has. She smiled then, not the polished kind, but the kind that happens when you finally stop fighting yourself. Then sit, she said softly, eyes lowering to our joined hands. just for a while. So I did. We sat there in silence, two people who had run out of ways to hide, letting the world fade outside the window. And in that quiet, without promises or names for what it was, everything between us finally made sense, because it didn't have to. It's strange how something that never really began can still feel like it changed everything. Months have passed since that day in the cafe. The rain's come and gone 100 times since then, and yet, whenever I smell coffee or hear thunder roll in from a distance, I still think of her. Lara didn't disappear from my life. Not completely. Sometimes she texts, just a few words, a picture of the sea, or a line from a book she's reading. I answer when I can, but I don't ask for more. We both learned the hard way that not every connection is meant to survive definition. She once told me that love isn't always about holding on. It's about recognizing when something deserved to happen, even if it couldn't stay. I didn't understand it then. I do now. The truth is, I don't think what we had was about romance. It was about being seen at the right time by the wrong person and realizing how that can still heal something in you. She helped me understand the kind of quiet strength it takes to walk away from what feels right, simply because it isn't fair. And me? I stopped waiting for things that needed saving. I stopped confusing comfort with love. I started living in the small, imperfect moments, the ones that don't promise forever but still leave a mark. Sometimes I still see her across the street near that same cafe. She always looks the same, composed, gentle, like someone who's learned to forgive herself in small doses. Our eyes meet, we nod, and that's enough. There's peace in that kind of distance, the kind that no longer aches. I think about the night we sat in silence, her hand on mine, neither of us brave enough to name what was happening. And maybe that's the point. Some things don't need a name. They just need to exist for a while, to remind you that you're still capable of feeling something real, even when it's fleeting. If she ever wondered what she taught me, it's this: love doesn't always arrive to stay. Sometimes it comes to show you the parts of yourself you'd forgotten were still alive. So when people ask if I regret it, if I wish I'd done something differently, I just smile. Because I wouldn't trade those quiet, impossible moments for anything certain. Not anymore. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?